Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's not going to be talking about new music. Instead, I'm going to be talking about a concert I went to last night at the Kodak Center in Rochester, New York. That is the concert by Brian Wilson, the genius behind the Beach Boys. And listen, this isn't new music, but very little new music that I like that isn't hip hop is made without the severe influence of Brian Wilson. And this is the thing. I bought the tickets because when you live in a town like Rochester and anybody you sort of want to see in concert goes, you just buy tickets because we don't get a lot of shows through here. So I didn't have very high expectations. I'd seen him before in 2001, 20 years ago, back when I was 24 and he was 59 and not 79. And so I had very low expectations, you know. But this show, the two words I'm going to use was strange and wonderful. It was more wonderful than it was strange, but it was also very strange. And before I even really get into what made the show good and strange and wonderful, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this was 10 times better than seeing him 20 years ago. Now, I know what you're thinking. Brian Wilson has been suffering from physical ailments, from severe psychological ailments for most of his life, right? The majority of his life. And in theory, you know, the fact that he has to come out on stage in a walker, the fact that he needs a teleprompter, a bunch of these things, you know, like you might think that now that he's 79, close to 80, and he looks like he's 100, right? He looks a lot older than he is. You might think that this would make it worse. But actually, 20 years ago, it was much worse. Now, that was a Pet Sounds reunion show. And first of all, even though I love Pet Sounds, I like seeing more of the catalog than just the one album that I've listened to a million times, you know. The reason that it was worse before was that Brian Wilson was angry in 2001. It seems as though he knew that he was not there. And he was aware of that and he was angry about it and he had expectations on himself. And I remember like he was like sort of angry with the crowd. He'd like tell them to sit down and stand up in sort of an angry tone. Sit down, stand up. Like he just seemed like an angry, confused person. In this performance, he seemed much more like he's abdicated a lot of that. He's comfortable letting other people sing his songs. He's comfortable with other people playing. He seems happy. He seems comfortable. And he doesn't seem angry. And so it makes it this great way, and that's what makes it so wonderful, the question is, you know, you might be asking, should I go see Brian Wilson? Well, listen, when are you going to get to see one of the greatest geniuses in music history in concert, right? You can't see Hendrix anymore. You can't see Mozart anymore. Okay? Yeah, you can see McCartney, you know, if you go to a football stadium or whatever, but you can still see Brian Wilson in a fairly small setting, and it's a great chance not just to see him perform, but to really sit there and be in the room with the person who made the music. There is value to that. So, before I get more into it, let's talk about some of the things that made this one of the weirdest shows I've been to, including a scandalous story. First of all, it's kind of funny because I was supposed to go with my son, my daughter, my wife, and you know, all four of us were supposed to go. My son and daughter are on a camping trip, so I had 2 extra tickets. I didn't quite know what to do with it, and I ended up giving one of the tickets just away, and then I gave the other ticket to my daughter's friend. So already it's kind of funny, right? Going to a Beach Boys concert with 2 teenage girls or a Brian Wilson concert with 2 teenage girls, not the typical demographic. You know, most people there were in their 60s, 70s, and above, right? So that's already kind of funny. The Kodak Center in Rochester is a funny place because it's too big and too small at the same time. Like it's not quite intimate, it's not quite big. The space is odd, like the concession stands are like all in one place and it feels sort of like an employee workroom or something. It's just kind of a weird place. The merch, well, first of all, just the concessions were weird. They offered something called an apple log, and they offered cookies, but they didn't have cookies. So it was on the menu, but you couldn't get them. So it's just kind of weird and unsettling right off the bat. Then we go to the merch table. You see, I bought that poster. You think it's a poster, I'll get to that in a second. And it's just weird having all the merch with pictures of Brian Wilson from 55 years ago, you know? It's kind of a weird thing, like celebrating somebody 55 years ago, you know? Like, I'm gonna have to wait 11 years to have lived as long as that time difference is. I would prefer to see images of him now, you know, the way he is. Like, kind of like Bob Dylan has some images of him in the past, but some images of him now, but already is kind of in a weird state. By the way, that merchandise that I bought a t-shirt for my daughter. It's awesome. She's gonna be the coolest kid in her high school, no question. That's a towel. You see the size of that thing? It is neither big enough to be a beach towel, nor small enough to be a hand towel. It's just a great example of the weirdness of the show. Plus it says 2020, the tour is 2021. So it's just, everything is weird. And then you go into the venue and they're playing music. Okay, music, like soft, jazzy, instrumental versions of popular songs. They're playing Beach Boys music. You're about to hear Help Me Rhonda, performed by Brian Wilson and Al Jardine of the Beach Boys, along with the studio musicians who make up the band. But now you're going to hear it like you're in a 1980s elevator. Very weird. The weirdest part, there was this couple. I do have a picture of them, but I'm not going to show it, just in case it can come back. A very sweet old couple, okay? And they'd just very clearly been together for a very long time. And they're sitting next to each other 2 rows ahead of me. And the husband's looking at his phone, He's looking at his phone, and he's like looking at Facebook, and he's showing her all these pictures and pointing things out, and she's kind of looking, like, okay, good. Oh, isn't that sweet? Great. And then every once in a while, he takes his phone from showing it to her, and then he turns it so that only he can see it. Now, I can see it, because I'm 2 rows behind him, but she can't. And he is looking, it's a message thread, and one of the pictures in a message thread is a picture of a man from his chest to his knees with an erect penis. So I'm sitting here, I'm watching this guy, I suppose it was Grindr, I don't know what it was. It's like sending these like very aggressive sexual texts to some man, and then so like, oh, look, there's my cousin Patty, look, they went to the Poconos over the weekend, isn't that nice? Dicks. Hey, look at this. Just a very odd setting. Fortunately, my daughter and her friend did not notice that was happening. I was very nervous because that would have been very unpleasant. Then the show starts, and it is kind of weird to see Brian Wilson coming out on a walker with 2 handlers, his whole presence is just fairly odd. Now, it was more odd 20 years ago, right, where he was a little bit more active, but there's a piano that's in front of him, as you see in the picture behind me, but the piano is just a prop. He never plays it. I don't think it's even plugged in. I don't even think it has any keys. It's just a prop that makes it okay for him to sit down, like FDR or something, right? Like we need some kind of justification for this old, very unwell man to sit down, but there you go. And he has a microphone in front of him, and he sings quite a bit, but then there's an actual teleprompter. Like a teleprompter. So, but the weird thing is, he sings totally on key, unlike 20 years ago, where he basically sang nothing on key. It was a huge mess. He sings mostly on key, 99% on key, a couple of things off here or there. And he knows all the rhythms and the cadence, and he's very, very clearly following along with the song. And so it's just kind of this weird sort of thing of, I'm not old enough yet to understand, but like memory loss is a real thing. And it just seems like he just doesn't know some of the words. Like he knows the song, he knows the tune, but he just doesn't know some of the words. And in that way, something that might have made a younger me think like, oh man, he doesn't even know his own words. It actually makes me think of him as something of a hero, that he's persisting. Because, like admitting you need help, admitting you need a walker, right? Admitting you need a teleprompter. Hell, me, just this year for my birthday, admitting that I need reading glasses. This takes strength. This takes bravery, It's terrible. It's terrible to get older and to feel that. And so when I saw the teleprompter, I thought, awesome. He's still out here performing, even though his memory is that weak, right? Amusingly, my daughter said, that's him? He looks like Biden. And I think that is true. If you look at him now, he does look a little bit like Biden. The other question my daughter asked is he doing anything? And when he's not singing, he's not actually doing anything. So it's kind of a weird thing because he doesn't sing every song. He lets other people in his band sing songs. So a lot of the time he'll just be sort of sitting there and kind of like moving his mouth like this, just sort of like, just like not bored, but just sort of like, just kind of sitting there, like your grandfather after Thanksgiving, just kind of sitting around watching everything. It's very funny because the focus is on him, even when someone else is singing. It's Brian Wilson. You're not going to watch, some other dude sing a song. You're going to be watching Brian Wilson the entire time. So it all hinged on the quality of his backup band. And the sincerity of his backup band, because that's the thing. Like a bad backup band like that, like on these kind of review acts, would just be terrible. But it's clear that they love the music, that they love him, that they love what's happening, and they're really good, and their chops are really good. At one point, there were 12 musicians on stage. Okay, usually that doesn't lead to good things, but here, all playing Fenders, all beautifully in tune, everyone's doing something, and it's this reminder, right, that this little guy, that little guy right there, sitting around, has 11 other people trying to recreate what he did 60 years ago. You know? It's amazing. It's awesome to see, like, this guy who's in this state and still participating, but, like, be around what he created. All these young, powerful people at the peak of their musical talent and ability, trying as hard as they possibly can to achieve recreating what he did. In a way, it reminded me less of a concert and more of Kanye's listening parties. Because it's just like a genius listening to his music, you know? And he's singing along a little bit, you know? But still, it ended up being this, like, communing with Brian Wilson's genius. That's what the whole concert felt like. And I did have good tickets. That helped. And it was a good venue. But that's how it felt. So I'm not going to go through all the songs, but it opens up with California Girls. It's very nice because Al Jardine, one of the original members of the Beach Boys, or maybe he wasn't one of the original members, maybe he joined a little bit later. If you're a Beach Boy fanatic, I've got this friend Chris, he's like this Beach Boy fanatic. I didn't know, I've known him for years, and then I talked to him the other day, and he's like going on and on about Brian Wilson's touring band and all the members and all that stuff. So I'm not sure exactly when he joined, but, you know, one of the early members, at least, of the Beach Boys on there. It's great. You know, he's like very fit, very healthy, you know, around the same age as Brian Wilson, but, you know, he's obviously not suffered the same psychological trauma and abuse that Brian Wilson has. So it's nice having them kind of playing off each other. Then the whole thing is talking about, like, playing his hits, right? That's what it says. Performing his greatest hits live. But then I think, like, the second song was Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City is not one of the Beach Boys' greatest hits. And I love Salt Lake City, but that's a weird choice for a song. I do want to make a little pitch. If you can find these, you need to find these. These were re-releases from 2001 of Beach Boys albums, and they come with 2 albums on one. So, you know, once you get up to Pet Sounds, then you need to buy the individual albums and the box sets. But if you want to get, like, all the early stuff, you know, this has Summer Days and Today, and I bought this used at Amoeba Records in Los Angeles for like $10. It's a lot of great music on here. Salt Lake City is on Summer Days and Summer Nights. Anyways, so if you can track these down, I would suggest, personally, don't spend $40 on getting the vinyl version of Today. Spend the $20 or $30 it takes to get this CD. Because having all their early stuff, like back-to-back like this, with those bonus tracks, it's been the best way to enjoy that. Benny plays Surfer Girl, which he says was the first song he ever wrote. And I'm not like my friend Chris, so I didn't know that was the first song he ever wrote, so that's really nice. And it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful hearing him sing it, you know, and he does, and hearing all these people going by. The weird thing that he does here, and he does on most of the songs, is he does kind of a lounge act thing, where he says the name of the song at the end of the song. It's a big, Surfer Girl, Surfer Girl. It's like, Brian, we know. The word Surfer Girl has been repeated around 42 times throughout this entire song. Then came In My Room. If there's any reason to go see Brian Wilson in concert, if there's one song to see, it has to be In My Room. I was crying like a baby. Let me tell you why. First of all, if you don't know In My Room, it's one of the great songs ever written, right? It's an ode to the comfort that you get, especially as a teenager, to being inside of your room. And it's so emotional to me as somebody who feels for Brian Wilson, right? A very abusive father and had a terrible time growing up, and you understand that this room was his refuge, right? But then also the sad fact that after he wrote this song, he fell into addiction, he fell into great psychological, just loss, and ended up spending years in his room. So like the room is both like the place where he felt safe, but then the place that he ended up abusing and made him less safe. It's this bizarre thing where I feel like the entire drama of Brian Wilson, who's sitting right there singing to me. I happen to be sitting in the middle, and the teleprompter is right in front of us, so it looked like he was staring right at me. and he's singing to me about In My Room. And then I remember hearing this song, and I remember feeling so connected to it. You know, feeling the same feeling of isolation and fear and just sitting in my room by myself. And remembering how this song helped me out, that a song written 15 years before I was even born, like, could help me out and could help me understand and mediate my own pain, you know? This song and this power and this history and this story, and it's all right here. The same night with the weirdos with the Facebook cell phone and the Muzak and the weird merchandise and the walking out on the walker. It also made me cry because it ended up being a sort of weird comment on mortality, you know? People die in their rooms, you know? He's a very old guy. He's not well. For most of my adult life, I've looked up to him as this great hero, and I sort of having this moment with him where I'm realizing I'm probably not going to see him sing In My Room again, you know? It's hard. It's hard. It's the emotion of the song. I don't care if there's 11 other guys behind them and they all went to Berkeley and they all can play perfect notes and all that stuff. I don't care if I'm in just some random city and he just sang the song yesterday the same way and he's going to sing the song the same way tomorrow and he's going to sing the, you know what I mean? The power of the music comes through. That's what we missed in COVID, is this power of the music. He also did some other songs that are lesser known, Add Some Music, California Saga. Did Don't Worry Baby, which is another one of my favorite early Beach Boys songs. And there, Al Jardine's son sang it, Matt Jardine. And he's great because he very clearly is happy to be there, but doesn't have that sense of awe, which is very necessary because you don't want everybody to be a Beach Boys fanboy in the band, you know? Kind of like with Star Wars, you don't want every project to be made by a super fanboy, you know, because then it just ends up being homage. Darlin', another guy sang again. I just come to love Darlin'. I made a video about Darlin' and Daft Punk. I'll put a link to it up there. You should check it out. Then they did Do You Wanna Dance, which is just back to Brian singing. I just love it. And I loved because the cool thing was, with all these players, there's a guy on, sorry, I need to figure out what time it is. I teach class and I have enough time. There's this guy, I'm teaching, I have an hour in between classes and I'm doing the video in between classes. Priorities. There's this, you know, with a percussionist for the song Do You Wanna Dance, he's got these floor toms and he's playing them. And just that morning, my daughter was playing the Ronettes for me because she's getting a little bit into older music, you know. And I was explaining to her Phil Spector style of music and how it influenced Brian Wilson and all that. And I was able to show her, like, look, this is the wall of sound. This is that thing. Like, how can there be so many people playing music and it all sounds so clear and good? This is it right here. You're basically seeing Phil Spector in concert as well. It was great. Then this guy, Blondie Chaplin, comes out, who I thought I knew about until I was talking to my friend Chris over the summer, and he's like, I had tickets, and you know he's a Beach Boys super fan. Like, do you know Blondie Chaplin? I'm like, yeah, I think I know her a little bit. Him, right? Okay, turns out I was thinking of somebody else then. I don't know who he is. He's great, a great addition. He would like do his original songs. He wasn't doing like a Brian Wilson thing. I guess he's a big star or a popular guy amongst music circles. I'd never heard him before. He has a very odd stage presence. I said to my daughters, it's like if Frankenstein taught was a middle school art teacher. Like, that's just kind of his look. He had this kind of lurch look. He'd just kind of walk around and like he would sing, like he'd just start singing, like, oh, like really low and weird and like just very unsettling, but awesome. Again, it's nice to have more people on stage who are not just purely in awe to Brian Wilson. I Can Hear Music, another beautiful song with another singer. Then when they did Wouldn't It Be Nice, it was funny because Al Jardine asked his son, are you ready? Because he's going to be singing Wouldn't It Be Nice? And he said, not really. And I think that's a beautiful tribute to the thing about seeing Beach Boys songs played live is it's just incomprehensible how good the music is and how, like, the studio version to try to recreate it, the amount of effort that goes into it. And for this guy to sing it, and he sang it well, it was really nice. And then in the middle part of it, Brian actually sang the middle part of Wouldn't It Be Nice, which is, you know, a very, very sweet moment. Then came Sloop John B. Now, I am famous for not particularly liking Sloop John B in my house. Caroline Noe and Sloop John B, they're fine, but they're just not my favorite parts of Pet Sounds. That changed. Seeing this song being played by these 12 people was so damn impressive. You just understand the amount. I mean, if you listen to the instrumental version on the box set, you just get the beauty of this song. Like the guy's playing a flute and all these guitars and all these jangling sounds, and he was singing on most of it and singing it well. It was great. Continuing on the pet sounds, he did God Only Knows. Someone's actually playing the French horn. I wish my son were there. He's a French hornist. Horner? He plays French horn. And here it's cool because Brian Wilson sort of did the most singing here because he's sort of making it kind of jazzy. Like he makes it a little bit staccato, like, I may not always love you. Like, and I don't think he's making it that way just because he can't sing more legato. I think it's actually just a choice that he's making in the way he sings it. And again, I'm comparing that to 20 years ago, and I remember hearing God Only Knows 20 years ago and just thinking it was terrible, just thinking he was just totally off key and bitter and angry. And here, yeah. Then they did Barbara Ann, and it was kind of funny because that's where he just seemed the most, not confused, but just kind of bored, just kind of looking around. After the show, my daughter said that he looked like Bo, my dog. Like, Bo's a sweet old dog. He kind of sits on the couch, and he doesn't look stupid. He doesn't look bored, but he just has this kind of funny look. And sometimes he'll just do one-eye wink. He'll just be like, and that really is a good description of what he's like when he isn't playing. They did sort of a series of encores, which were great because they got everyone to stand up to clap for Brian Wilson, and everyone just stood and kept standing for Barbara Ann and for Surfin' USA, which was just great to hear, and fun. Fun is particularly great because you had, I think it was the only time in the show where you had Al Jardine and Brian singing at the same time, making these great harmonies. And then the show ended with the beautiful song Love and Mercy, which is great because it's not a Beach Boys song. It's kind of breaking out of this tradition, but you know, it is the symbolic song of Brian Wilson, the human being. Not Brian Wilson, the genius, not Brian Wilson, the Beach Boy, but Brian Wilson, the tortured, tough, wonderful, difficult person that he is. It had to be Love and Mercy, which sort of made it the best song of the night because it just made you feel that real communion, you know. So there it is. There is the wonderful and weird show of Brian Wilson at the Rochester, at the Kodak Performance Center. It's a very good show. If you've seen Brian Wilson in concert, do you agree with what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? Does this all resonate with you? If you haven't, I think you should go see him. Okay, I better get ready for class. What are we doing in class today? Still working on the verb avoir. Whenever I teach the verb avoir, I get all philosophical and talk about how you can have but not be, and you can be without having. It's very fun. Okay, till next time, there's the camera.